But anyway,
So
Memetics. What are memetics? It's like memes, right? And I imagine your answer is going to be yes.
it is, yes, it is like memes. So a little background knowledge on memes. So Richard Dawkins he's like the fucking selfish gene guy. He talks about like a lot of evolution stuff, right?
What
So he
people remember
was
him for? Richard Dawkins. Sorry.
yeah, they remember him for all of his cringe neckbeard atheist followers,
yeah.
basically.
That's exactly. Yeah.
He's not as bad as Christopher Hitchens though, as far as being like a
Rest.
pompous asshole, but like um he came up with the idea or coined the term kind of memetics like just as an illustration of a different kind of replicator that would potentially follow the same types of rules that genes do. So a meme is like the gene, it's like one unit of information transfer, kind of. So like, and it could be anything. It could be like a literal like internet meme, which is what the term has come to be synonymous with or most associated with. But like, it could be like a recipe, it could be hunting knowledge, it could be like words, pictures, stories, basically anything, any kind of information transfer. So since then, that idea has been taken a lot further than even Richard Dawkins like planned for it to be. Like there's this one book that I just read in my server recently. It's The Meme Machine by Suzanne Blackmore. And she takes it like super hella far to the point where like we are basically just conduits for memes, like because they're replicating on their own fucking runaway kind of like genetic evolution, but memetic evolution. And so there's also books about like viruses of the mind is one where it's talking about like memeplexes, which are large groupings of memes, like religion. Religion is a memeplex. Like it's a whole bunch of different like memes together. And obviously the cringe neckbeard atheists would be of the type that would say that that has like a detrimental effect on people, like having these types of things. But um you
God
can see it
proceeds.
kind of just looking at like internet memes. So we can look at the history of internet memes. How have you all seen memes change since you've been
Well, I guess
internet people?
the thing
Drastically.
I'm curious about with memetics is, obviously it's a very it's a, I don't want to call it a field of study, but to a layman, how do you connect what you've just discussed to somebody sharing a cat meme? Because it feels like a cat meme is so vulgar and benign to possibly to connect
Yeah.
to the field of memetics, and also what's the relevance of that once you do connect? What is it doing once you do connect that cat meme to the science
Right.
of memetics?
So how does the layman connect it? Well, first I guess the layman has to start thinking, but after the layman starts thinking, um, it's not the cat meme, right? It's what the cat meme is a mask over, right? Like that cat with a rifle or something. Because that's one of the first memes I remember. There's a cat in a window with a sniper rifle, and it was on funnyjunk.com. Um, this is in like third fucking grade or something. I don't remember. We had access to the Mac lab. Anyway, um, yeah, it's not what like the meme isn't the cat with the sniper rifle. The meme, I guess, is that something. It's funny that something cute is dangerous, or I don't know. I don't really know what the meme would be, but you'd have to look at like the picture is just a mask.
So what are these? So it feels like the idea of memetics. Basically, I guess I only rephrase the idea of memetics being pioneered by Richard Dawkins was trying to frame something more profound and significant than it actually ended up being.
Um, that just depends like on what level of meme you're looking at. Like if you're looking at internet memes, like the question with like the cat memes or whatever, the actual question isn't anything to do with the memes themselves, like individually. It's like the propagation of them. So why does a particular meme get spread or go viral?
Yeah,
What is it like? What are the qualities of memes that spread?
yeah. What's the
Yes, and
phenomena?
then I suppose you would look at a cat meme as just okay. that's a simple example of memetics. But I guess you might also look at political memes, then QAnon, those sort of things, and
Any
that's what I
idea?
guess.
Yeah, any idea? The medium is what we would call memes.
Right.
Does that make
Okay. So
sense?
which
Yeah,
all
like
right, the medium. So
the
it's like
medium is
television
memes,
and video
but
games,
there's
right?
an underlying actual meme underneath that medium, I think. It's just ideas. Like, so let's analyze something very simple like cats. Or like, why do people like Roomba said, why do people share the cute cat memes?
Oh no, hang on, this has a bit of a mental warm up. That's a good one.
Because we like cute shit.
We like
There
cute.
is
It
a lot of
I
propagates.
mean, in which sense you're talking about like that the cat meme represents what that society. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but with memetics, you can also measure what that society holds, prioritizes, or what that society
Yeah, and it's
values.
not just like the society either, because the memes that propagate most are based on our most corporeal drives. So, like sex, food, fighting. Like, that's why the majority of political ad campaigns, or even like the news and stuff, uses fear as a driver, or sex in advertising, whatever it is, because those memes that relate to like sex and food and fear, are the ones that we're most likely to pass on. It's like looking at old chain emails. If you like scare the shit out of boomers, like if you don't share this message, something bad's going to happen to you, then they're more likely to pass it on.
Oh, and yeah, okay, yeah. So that's so. Uh, yeah, I remember those. Forward. The FW colon, a very
I've
long time
retweeted a
ago.
few of them myself back in the
Yeah.
day.
In middle school, I think. Well, yeah, middle school. It was actually sending sex gifts in reference to our previous talk. And a lot of sending sex gifts, like The Simpsons and cartoon characters and
I
whatnot.
remember the first time
Um,
I saw a picture of a penis was in like an email like that. When I was at my friend's house and she had like gotten forwarded an email that just had a picture of a penis. And like she showed it to me and I was like, oh wow. She's like, what, have you never seen a penis before? I'm like, of course I've seen a penis before. Definitely never seen a penis before. But yeah. Thank you, Memetics, for my first
but
penis experience.
memetics is backwardly applicable. Well, I mean, I guess no. You've already covered this, so it would be applied to religion. It would be applied to everything prior. And then what you're addressing is that now the idea of the meme. So meme was something very simple. So going back in human history, um, the advent of farming, the transfer of knowledge, scribes, the writing down in clay, in cuneiform, hieroglyphs, so forth. But now it's detonated to a scale which I suppose would boggle the mind.
It's the
Um,
rate too. The rate is with the internet and our ability to transmit information so
Yeah.
quickly, the rate of memetic evolution is like insanely accelerated. But you bring up a really good point with farming. I don't know if y'all have heard of this theory. There's a lot of people that talk about how we haven't really domesticated wheat or like whatever other farming things. Like the wheat has domesticated us because basically we're like propagation machines for or like farm animals. Like there wouldn't be this much a monoculture of these specific plants, except that we are cultivating them. And so they're continuing to propagate like way more than they would. So some
that
people,
that's symbiotic or basically or parasitical.
yeah, some kind of like symbiotic thing, but basically that like we have somewhat been domesticated by these things as well. That's kind of the same thing that some people talk about with memetics, because we are the conduit through which the memes move. And so there's like this one way of looking at it where it's like the memes, we're not in control so much anymore. Like we're just kind of the medium through which the algorithm of memetic selection is working, while also genetic selection is doing the same thing with our bodies. But those things sometimes they work together because obviously all the memes would die out if humans died out. But it's the same way that like viruses work, because if a virus just killed all of humans, that would be bad for the virus too, and it wouldn't spread anymore because those people would be dead. So there's like a weird balance between genetic selection and memetic selection, and human bodies are just kind of like caught in the middle. And
That's crazy.
I don't know. It's
That's
yeah,
quite. I get what you're saying. That's quite profound. So
That is.
the systems that we tame or that we tame and create, we are no longer the creators of those or the architects of those. We become subject to what we create.
yeah. And then
Ah,
if you look at like death cult type of memes, like memes that if you have a meme cult or meme selection for something like don't have babies, like be fucking whatever the word is, celibate. Like if you had memes that were only transmitted down the genetic line, those memes would die out, right? Because you can't pass on, like with genes, you're not passing on your genes to your kids if you don't have any kids. And if children are only getting their religious beliefs from their parents and not culturally, then a meme lineage of celibacy would die out. But meme selection moves laterally too, because we transmit information like you get more of your personality arguably from your friends and culture than you do from your parents. That's why it only takes like a generation or two for like children to assimilate to the culture that they're in. So like meme selection works by slightly different rules than genetic selection. It moves a hell of a lot faster. And like, especially with the internet now, it's like crazy runaway memetics, which you can look at the ripple effects of that in the way that like our political system works now and stuff, and how fucking crazy some of this shit is, and how fed by like fear and stuff it is too.
I
Doesn't.
mean,
Oh, that,
people are complaining about how polarized we are, and so we've never been so divided, blah blah blah. Which point, what is if well, I guess there isn't really an end point, but where is this going to go if this accelerates?
it seems very
Um,
accelerating.
A good question. Is there a way if we're taking this as canon, like this is true, memetic shit is like how Susan Blackmore describes it, can we control it? Because what she says at the end of her book is that we should practice mindfulness, basically a meditation to try to clear some of that shit out of our head. But if you're fully like dependent upon your genetic and memetic evolutions, do you actually even have that choice to be able to like stop this process from happening, basically, or are you just like completely subservient to it?
Of course, you have the choice to attempt. The success rate is completely irrelevant to the question of like, can I try? Because like, if everybody just up and tried tomorrow, you'd have to propagate that meme. I mean, I think memes kind of like it makes me feel like very much like a math. Like it's a good measuring tool. Like it's a tool to apply to analyze something, analyze this spread of information. But I don't feel like it's some sort of like driving force behind why we do the things that we do. I think it's an influencing force, maybe. Is it even a force? I don't even know. This is confusing. My brain hurts.
we, I mean, this goes back. So one of my nightmares I have is, all my games now. Like, I used to purchase DVDs and video games like that, and my horror story is, I mean, what happens if the internet explodes? I lose access to all the 400, I think 400 games I have on Steam, which is I thought was okay for somebody that has Steam for as long as I have, but it seems to be a lot. But the
It's a
point
lot.
of point of that bringing that up is, do we destroy the internet?
Yes. Yes.
Return to monkey. No, I think we accelerate it is my take. But like
That's a shit. Why?
obviously there's because I think that having the algorithm social credit system is like the ultimate goal, like we were talking about
Isn't that just
before.
another meme that can be usurped by a different meme?
Not really, like that would be the conduit for the memes, but the end goal there would be to eventually like what's the word? Like merge, I guess, with the to leave the corporeal form altogether and to exist in a purely memetic state would be like the ideal end goal there. Because then you're like removing the evolution, you're removing the genetic selection, and you're like purely moving into like a meme medium. But at that point, like you could program the algorithm purposefully in like which with whatever social engineering parameters you were like trying to set forth or whatever. Or yeah,
Fuck,
I don't
It's
know.
that's kind of confusing. So, isn't that kind of makes me think of like Nirvana or something, right? Where like you just you shut off all of these biological genetic like things like your senses and all this other shit that and like what you're naturally drawn to do, and you have complete control of the mind to enter the ultimate meme, right? Like the ultimate like baseline floaty space thing.
like, but there's your
Well,
homework. Like, can you connect the Dharmic religious philosophies and cosmology
Yeah, kind of.
to 21st century memetics
Yeah,
and
you
what
just think
Rim
of
was
it like
talking
another
about?
meme, like Roomba said, like religion itself.
No. What I'm saying is, I'm talking about like the metaphysics. Like,
Oh,
can Dharmic faith, um, does it already talk about what we are talking about?
it
yeah,
definitely
yes,
does.
it
Like,
does.
not to get fucking Jungian about it, but like every time we come up with new terminology for things or like new technological advances, we're still just re-going over all of the same narratives that we already have, but with new verbiage, basically. So, and that doesn't mean that that's necessarily true. That's just the limits of our cognitive abilities. Like, we're trapped in a system that's only so many layers abstracted from like our corporeal experience of the world, which is completely different from what like actual reality is around us.
And
But
I think that's valid. But what if I don't know if there's any standing for this idea, but what if like the like exponential growth of these memes and like the transfer of information and like the internet kind of tapping into our conscious thought, like what if that expands those. Oof, I'm having uncomfortable ideas. How do I word this? Like, as far as going over stuff that's already been gone over, but those people didn't have the access to the information and to the wide selection of memes that we have. It
exactly,
feels
yeah.
almost it feels almost like we're like some external force, like some sort of like memetic force, is grasping for survival by expanding as fast as it possibly can to find something to latch onto. That's exactly the thought that I just had. Is what it
That's
feels like.
exactly what it's doing. Like, it's not a conscious process. It's the same as genetics. It's the same as like natural selection. Like, it's not
Genie battles.
consciously working towards anything. It's just anything that does can propagate well, propagates well. And so
We're
you can
only
almost
talking
look at it like
with this though, we're only talking about the population of humanity who are connected to the internet
you bring up a
because
really good point. Yeah, sorry,
I
go
just
ahead.
remembered. So one of our Discord members brings up the state of nature. So I did like a 6 month white savior program. It basically was a white savior program in India. Only 12 hours of electricity. Um, there only three households have satellite TV. No, two households. It's about a village of 1,000 people. When I was there in 2008, 2009. Um, now one of the households with a satellite TV did not accept anyone. The other household with satellite TV, they invited the community to come in and sit down and watch the TV. Now, there's still some connection there to TV. They would play like the national news and some of the soap operas and whatnot between like 6 and 8 before the kids had to go to bed. But there were still millions, hundreds of millions of people who are still in a sort of subsistence. And I don't want to patronize them in that, not that bad. Now, there's also people that they're living in like a agricultural community. They still have smartphones, but then there's people in the agricultural community that don't.
And you can
Um,
notice a really interesting dynamic with those kinds of meme sheltered communities, right? If you look at places where they don't have as much access to the internet and they don't have like large cities where there's lots of people congregated and stuff where they can share memetics laterally, like I was talking about, then the primary way that memes get passed on is from parent to child, like in more religious communities. And if you look at that, they're way more traditional and they're way more like based on having like family and babies and stuff like that, because then that's the primary form of memetic transfer. So those more agricultural or like country-ish or like places where they don't have the internet. They're more traditional and they're more in line with what you would think would be evolutionarily beneficial from a genetic perspective, because their genetics is more of a driver than memetics as to like what the humans are doing.
Now I understand the distinction you're talking about, genetics versus memetics. Okay. All right. And then this may not be slightly if we accelerate memetics. Um, and then this requires expertise and experiences which none of us have really had probably in recent years of our life. And I'm just curious, is what happens then between the ascended sort of urban population and the non-ascended rural population of the planet, basically. I'm
It
curious as
kind
to
of
where.
depends on what meme we settle on for like imperialist thought, right? Or like
And
or
really, the algorithm just has to run itself out.
yeah,
Like
like
it's
whatever
it's not
happens.
even necessarily like good or bad or ascended or whatever.
What would
If we
this
go off of
physically, in terms of day-to-day living, what does this state look like? Are we spending more time on our phones? Are we going about our daily business?
Yeah, definitely more time on phones, more things that propagate memes. So everything that's more conducive to meme spreading will become more prevalent. And the thing is, that's not fucking healthy for us. Like us, we're not in control of this. The memes are in control of this. And what's good for the memes is what's driving our behavior because like well, that's kind of an aside, but like it we have problems with mental health now, right? We have like problems with social media addiction. We have like the toxic nature of like political discourse and Twitter and stuff like that. And like that is literally meme driven selection for memetic propagation that we're just kind of being drug along with.
And if it accelerates dangerously, then that fucking sucks.
That's what I'm curious about with this whole mental health crisis that the industrial population. Me and Sci-Fi, I think we talked about this in person. My main two questions, and this isn't to you, this is just questions that I've been having, is what does mental health look like in the offline, in the sort of agricultural communities, in the so-called developing world, sort of related in terms of food, like I think it's Chad has one of the best food securities
Oh,
in the world because people are consuming their produce, they're consuming directly and they're exporting the rest, right? Whereas I live in the middle of the Southwest, so everything's being dragged in frozen. Um, but so that's one thing. So what is the mental health in that village I just talked about? I remember there were quite a few drunkards. There was at least one village drunkard. This is 2008, so this is pre-smartphone. This is on the cusp of smartphone stuff. My other one is, what does it look like in a place like, because me and Cypher we talked about it's like in China right now, where they're in a separate cultural narrative. Are they having the same mental health? I mean, Japan has had a long thing, but are they going through the same sort of self-aware, sorry, self-aware, ironic, self-diagnosis? Are they going through that same sort of thing? Um,
no, it kind of
because
looks
I think,
like.
go ahead.
Sorry, it kind of looks like each. You can almost draw cultural lines, I guess, but with memes of like when it comes to mental health, like what ideas are being propagated within that culture. Oh, this is confusing. Yeah, I don't think we're on the same narrative as a lot of these different places. Like, why are certain countries' birth rates dropping off drastically? Because they're the memes. So, like, okay, let's take Japan for example. Japan's a hugely fucking popular culture. People all over the world are like, oh my god, Japan, Japan, Japan. Anime, whatever. Um,
In weebs.
and weebs, right? That meme that's living through Japan has realized that it does not need to pass on its shit like genetically anymore, and I guess you could kind of explain that that's why their birth like you could I don't know if it's actual sound logic, but you could kind of explain like okay, well, that's why their birth rates are fucking dropping because they don't need to pass like they're passing on their ideas without
Well,
lineage.
what is the number one driver of lower birth rates? It's education. Education specifically among women. Higher education levels equals lower birth rates in what you could quote unquote call first world countries, although that's like outdated terminology. But like, what is education? Fucking memetics, like literally spreading information, like the information that's being spread. And
It's
it's,
replacing genetics.
yeah,
Then
basically.
there's a tug of war between them. So
That's so weird.
Japan's mental health crisis predates, and I'm actually curious as to how it's. I mean, you may, either of you may have. I mean, I've never been to Japan, but their mental health crisis with suicide and whatnot predates the 2000 late 2010s millennial. I fucking hate my life mental
Yes.
health crisis.
Yes.
So
Hikikomori.
right,
Yes.
I'm curious then that I don't want to patronize the culture because I'm not acquainted with it, but I think actually in India as well, they also had a mental health crisis in the middle class. That is those who live in the urban environments to go to university, like want to become engineers and whatnot. Those mental health crisis seems more, I don't want to say practical, but failure to meet standards, societal standards and whatnot, or a sort of external uh, validations. Um, I don't know. I'm just trying to frame. Let's talk about
Yeah.
like I guess what I'm trying to talk about is that you have different cultural spheres. Like we're in the West, which is
Yeah.
U.S., UK, Canada, the English speaking internet, and that world. And I'm just curious if, and right now we have different explorations in stuff like gender and sexuality, self-awareness and
Yep.
whatnot. And it almost feels like we're in a bit of a decay when it comes to the mental health situation. Like it's just
Uh,
doom, doom, doom.
you
But in
can kind
China,
of, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just wondering in China, like if I was a 31-year-old, moderately educated individual, as I am in China, what would I be seeing for the memes? What conversations would I be having? How would I feel about the world? Because right now in the West, it's like climate doom, climate this, like can't fucking buy a house, blah 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 blah. If take me exactly, so because China's not some backwards place now. It's the same tech level as the West now, practically, probably a little bit higher in some places. So when I open up my phone as a 30-year-old Chinese man with two kids and a family, what am I seeing? What am I hoping for? Do I have the same pessimistic outlook for the future? It would be great to have a conversation with someone of our demographic, of our age group, who is fully not like a Chinese American, not a Chinese immigrant, but someone fully like a full Chinese national, what their sort of worldview is, because our memes in this are extremely apocalyptic, pessimistic in nature.
It's kind of
But I'm
hard. Sorry.
no, I'm done.
It's kind of hard to grab just an isolated Chinese person because I feel like language is probably one of the better carriers of memes almost. And as soon as maybe this is just a take, an uneducated take, like off the top of my head, but I feel like language carries memes pretty well, and each language kind of carries its own kind of memetic structure, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like as soon as you come on with a Chinese person that has the English memetic virus, right? Like they're tainted. You already tainted them with outside influence, right?
So
Yeah, and we're
you're saying
becoming
that
more homogenized. Like there used to be a lot stronger pockets of memetics before we had the internet and like globalization. And as we get more and more connected, the it's becoming more homogenous like memetically across the world, besides those pockets where they don't have as much access to like the internet, like we talked about. But I think one of the
that's what I
things that
mean.
is
I don't know if like the Chinese millennial group are that you're saying that the memetics are pretty globalized right now, but I'm curious if they have the same attitudes
Some
we have.
some
Well,
memetic
China
side.
has very, very strong like limitations on memetic spread in their country. Like that's one of their biggest initiatives right now is very much like dictating the narrative on the internet. So they're trying really hard to win the memetic war. So they're
Mhm.
way ahead of us in that aspect.
Also, to add on to that real quick, I think they just passed some laws, or like we were going over some news in class the other day about them pulling most of their students out of English universities and cutting English out of most of their universities, um,
Wow,
and pretty
interesting.
much like starting that cultural like language war because I think it just kind of goes back to like my quick armchair theory of like language is a good carrier of well, obviously it's a good carrier of information. How else do you get
Right.
information? You communicate it. Um,
Because
They can
you
keep
can
the
still
Western
be
memes out if you
yeah,
can't
right.
speak English.
That's about to say. Like, if you're Chinese, as soon as you know how to speak English language, you can start going on Facebook groups and see all
Exactly. You
this
get
shit, and
everything
then boom.
else. Yep.
So
Yep.
the only so
I'm
it,
telling
we
you, China is way ahead of us on a lot of these things. Like a lot of these issues that we talk about with shit like fucking memetics and the social credit score and how to build a functioning society, like even back to the days of Confucius, they were thinking on a social engineering level that was much more, in my opinion, practical and workable than what we've been doing with fucking bullshit Enlightenment values. Like the shit that we have is unsustainable. Not to say that it's better or worse necessarily, because I think utopian obviously enlightenment values sound like a good idea, but from a practical fucking level, like they're doing the shit that for social engineering in all of these kinds of fields is way above the like beyond the fucking power curve.
yeah. So we
Way
don't want
far.
to. Yeah, we don't want to like transparently socially engineer over here. I feel like it's you get
We
backlash
have
immediately.
Yeah, we have a very strong libertarian streak, which is a meme that propagates in the West, in America specifically. Libertarian meme is very strong.
It's going to be our
funny that's
doom.
so China's like someone in China, working for the Chinese government is seeing all like the English. I want to kill myself memes and all that kind of pessimistic
It's like,
shit. The
let's
Chinese
stay
government's like,
away.
nope, nope, fuck that. They ain't gonna see that shit.
Yeah, they're like, we don't want that over here.
That's a good.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, though. I mean, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of credit to that idea.
Yeah, I think because yeah, I'm not personally a fan of the ironic, extreme pessimistic mental health stuff. Like, for a while, I didn't pursue any sort of mental health examination of myself because I saw these millennials on the internet saying, "Oh, I'm gonna kill myself." Like, "Oh, like jokes on you. I wish I was already dead." So I associated suicidal ideation or homicide or whatever, that kind of that depth of mental health with dysfunctional millennials because they fucking like meme the hell out of it. So they kind of reduced it a bit. But I'm thinking maybe if that was socially engineered out of our society, well, I don't know. Without, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I can see why the Chinese government would want to. If you want to have a functioning society, you should stop with a lot of this bullshit, probably.
And it's not just defensive, it's offensive too, because there's targeted memetic warfare. Like if you look at, and this sounds really dumb, at the most basic level, you talk about like hacking, like hijacking the elections or whatever. They weren't actually hijacking the elections, they were doing memetic warfare, like sending out information, thought viruses into the fucking internet to like,
To undermine our elections, yeah,
I
because
mean,
you undermine discourse, and
yeah.
it
then
sounds
everything else
ridiculous,
falls.
but when I was looking at the local news comments about the CDC no longer upholding the eviction whatever the eviction ban, okay, and I'm looking in the comments and it's just like, oh yay, let's evict some fucking poor people. I mean, they weren't saying that. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, why? Like, some of the local news comments are just
Oh
absolutely
God.
vile,
Yeah,
and I'm
never go
almost thinking.
into the local
Right, but I'm
news.
almost thinking stuff like comments because people are very, very cynical of the idea of bot warfare, but I think they also need to know how intelligence organizations work. So let's say I'm a fresh graduate from the University of Beijing or whatever, and I sign up to the Chinese intelligence service and say, "Hey, welcome, Sebastian. We're gonna assign you this office. that works in targeting local news websites in this state in the US. So if you could adopt this, it sounds fucking ridiculous, but
Yeah, that's
if you could,
literally what they do.
yeah, if you could imagine the day-to-day sort of drudgery of like of an office in like the intelligence headquarters in China or whatever, um, it seems
Yeah, that's
perfectly
literally what
believable.
they do. We do it too. That's what Russia
Yeah,
does. Like,
of
that's
course
what
we do.
everyone
Yeah.
does. They have people, I can't remember the word for it, like, but they literally have people whose entire job, that's what they do all day.
Because
Is like,
people think intelligence is like spying and James Bond and Jason Bourne. It's like, no, you got people that show up 9 to 5 and log into their computer and fucking talk
And
shit
shit
on.
posts on other people's countries'
Yeah, and that is,
forums.
yeah. So
And look at the wonders it does.
I, I'm very curious as to how it's gonna feel like for us, and it may not. I don't know. I'm because we were born into the Western sort of hegemony, as it were. We know what it's like to be on top. And then suddenly, I'll be very curious. We get to feel like what it's like to be someone born in Africa who doesn't speak English,
I mean, are
but
we?
consumes English, it consumes English media. Suddenly, it's China, which is the which is. I mean, I'm not really into this yellow peril nonsense. But maybe in 50 to 100 years, China is the cultural sort of dominant force. Um, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it's just we're gonna be living like how non-English people or English-speaking people have been living for the past 100 years.
Yeah, it's
Hopefully
probably
that
just
is the
cyclical.
hopefully that's the extent of it and nothing too fucking crazy. I hope. I
yeah.
hope we yeah.
I
Um,
agree with you. I don't have like a value judgment on like which specific group is in charge or whatever. I think like the memetic warfare on that level is like propaganda, right? And that's interesting. But then like if you scale it up again to what we were talking about at the beginning and memetics in general, like we have control to a certain extent with like the use of propaganda, which is using memetics. But if we go back to the memetics as a whole using us, like that's a whole different thing. And like that's its whole own algorithm that's just running. And everything under that, like all the culture wars and political wars and memetics at that level, is just a byproduct of the larger memetic algorithm running itself, like through us. And that's the part that gets like really fucking crazy and fun to think about, in my opinion. Because then it's like, that's the one where I'm like, if you accept it as canon, if you accept that that's what's happening, then within that, is there any room for like free will between genetics and memetics?
yeah, you're cucking yourself.
And if it's not canon, then we're in a completely unknown territory then, which is even probably fucking more wilder to think about. If it's not memetics, then who fucking knows what it is? And I think that's scarier to think about, because then you can't accurately predict what's happening or where it's going to go. So I think it's probably more comforting to, if you look at it from a memetic standpoint, then you can be like, oh, okay, well, this is what's happening.
I don't think you can
But if
predict
it's not
either
that,
way. I don't think
that's true.
memetics
Yeah.
is a prediction tool. I think it's just a
No, not
backwards
prediction, but
analyzing
you can
tool.
have some sort of comfort in being able to frame what's happening
Oh, fuck that.
and
It's
being like,
overrated.
yeah, because there is no precedent. Well,
I
yeah, there is no
personally don't have any
precedent.
control over like the large scale mimetic shifts that are going on in the world, right? So like, why concern myself with it to begin with?
I mean, it's good to simplify this in the sense that, Roomba, I wonder if, so these kind of behaviors, the memes, in a European medieval city, witch hunting, witchcraft, religion, like the Pope, that's just being replicated at a global scale. So that becomes a bit more comforting to know. It's just, of
Hmm.
course, on a global scale, it's more damaging.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I would say it's necessarily more damaging, although I do think like the fact that memetic replication is so far removed now from genetic replication because it has these other mediums it can go through and it's less tied, like the same way that a virus works, if it started to wipe out the human race to the point where we were small numbers scattered apart, that would be the same way as if a disease wiped out so many people that they were so spread apart that they couldn't pass it to anyone anymore. And then the people who had the immunities would rebuild. So even if memetic selection at some point tries to wipe us out, which it probably will, I don't think it'll be the overall end of the human race. I think that it'll just be like with a disease or whatever. But I because it's so far removed from genetic selection, I think it is very much not working in our best interest as far as mental health, like we talked about. But also, like, if you think that there's some kind of goal for humanity to achieve, then it's probably not conducive to whatever your goal is, because like you can almost kind of draw the political divide there, because leftists being more progressive have a tendency to be more on the side of the memes and like cultural change, and conservatives more on the genetic side because they want to have family and work and squirrel away food for the winter and like take care of themselves and whatever. And so you can see how the different systems are working, and you could make the argument that working more towards the genetic side is better for our mental and physical health and for the propagation of the species. Because, and let me preface this by saying, I think that there's a good balance that you can strike, because I think that people should be free to like express themselves and who they are. So obviously I'm not going to side with the conservatives, but if you look at the propagation of like LGBTQ plus memes as an idea for self-expression, it does have a tendency to run contrary to genetic selection, the same way that educating women runs contrary to genetic selection because we have less babies. So I'm not advocating women should be educated, because I'm a woman. I like being educated. But if you're looking at it from the perspective of what's the best for our mental health and our propagation, those memes are actually detrimental to that. So I can see how the conservatives would hold their position, even though I don't agree with it, because I don't think the ultimate goal of the human race is just to continue to propagate like some mindless genetic virus. So I don't agree with that on that basis. But they are correct if you're looking at it as like a degradation of whatever and getting away from like, and that's where you get into fucking replacement theory and all sorts of other like conservative talking points. That's not even conservative. That's like
I think I
alt-right.
posted
But
this on social media before, and that is, and we're talking about particularly in Asian cultures like Indian and Chinese, talk about Indian in general, and you're talking about conservatism versus, well, the opposite, commitment to definitions and standards and expectations. There is this sort of like, I guess, postmodernism about stuff, and be like, do whatever the fuck you want. I think that's what we're saying. I think this postmodernism in the West is what's fucking everyone up, is because nobody fucking knows what to do anymore. And there is something to be taken from, and my example was when me coming from, talking about memes, right? And conservative, not really conservative, but a more hierarchical, a more traditional Indian family, at least on my mother's side, provides that sense of this is what you need to do. Whereas a Westerner is like, I don't fucking need to do anything, and lo and behold, everyone wants to go and kill themselves.
yep.
So
You've literally come full circle. Like what we were talking about in the last time we were talking was, if you want to have a functioning society, you have to have some kind of meta narrative that everyone subscribes to, because the fact that we're doing the postmodern thing is the reason why we
Postmodern.
can't build something functional. Well,
Yep.
I mean,
it's something
it's more correct because there isn't no like legit meta narrative, but we don't function well
Well,
without one.
there's nothing legit, real underlying anything. Period. Right? It's all a fucking construction, but we have to decide on one, because just reaching for a bunch of shit in every single direction is not helpful for. Oh, okay, it's helpful for finding the next construction, but it's not helpful for like just existing. It's like an existential crisis on all levels.
But you said that there's something to take, and I think that was a while ago I posted about this. I was talking about, okay, so reject the closed-mindedness of the conservative idea, like that aspect of it, but perhaps embrace that commitment to expectation, to hard definitions to the concept of this is what you should do, this is what you need to do. Because I feel like our generation, millennials, particularly in the 2000s, we were told this is very much a product of the 90s, coming into the 2000s of you can be what you want, you can do what you know, you can be whoever you want to be. And it's like, no, fuck that. Like, listen to your parents a little bit, just a little bit.
Ooh,
Not just a little bit, maybe a bit more than that.
ooh. This comes back to the first episode that we ever, not the first one that was posted, right? Um, about like the casts roles, right? Like you have meta narratives within casts, right? And then you have a certain amount of movement within those casts. It's hard. There's barriers to entry, but you have movements within casts, right? And in this like ideal sense. So like you have this idea of like a controlled sense of freedom, right? Like, okay, if you don't
Exactly.
want to be in this kind of meta narrative, that's fine. You come over here to this compatible meta narrative because this is a cast, and the ultimate meta narrative that is society.
Exactly. And the fucking top level post gets to be postmodern. Only like the fucking
The people
ruling
that can
class
handle it. The people that can handle being
epistemological
postmodern.
anarchy.